guys. Fallout Equestria tonight, 9 p.m. If it's not, we'll actually be doing Cards Against Humanity. I say that just in case somebody gets sick or something. But we'll actually be doing Cards Against Humanity with our characters playing the cards. Waits for Nyota to punch someone for racism. Anyway, I'll see you guys tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitch. Links in the description. You can set a reminder. Twitch is good about that. Hello everyone. Welcome to Fiaura's channel and welcome to this review of Battletech Roguetech. So what is Roguetech? Roguetech is a modification designed to work with the Battletech game to give us all the other technology that exists in the Battletech universe all the way through the year 3070. The list that becomes available is so long that actually listing it all here would take half the video. Just naming it. It also drastically changes the game by adding all the planets of the Inner Sphere and expanding the map to include all the clan space as well, mentioned on the Sarna.net website, which is the Battletech wiki. In addition to this adds a metagame that you can complete missions for factions and ally to that faction, gaining significant benefits for contracts for that faction while making enemies of everyone else. Furthermore, the additional metagame is that using a server and player data, they determine which factions take planets based on missions you complete. So and it shows the location of every single player currently logged in on the map. This also indicates which planets are lost by which factions based on your actions and what contracts you take. So it does add this really big metagame that is kind of going on in career mode, which is honestly nice. On the surface, this does add tons of complexity, as well as longevity to the game. However, there are issues, and I will get to them. And I've spoken with the developers of the mod extensively as to why certain things are the way they are. A lot of the answers are harebrained schemes doesn't give them the tools nor the resources they need in order to truly make this experience function without a problem. So, Roguetech is genuinely fun to play. It adds dozens of new mech chassis, new vehicles that you have to fight, new weapons, new armor types, ammunition types. So many things get added to the game. It just really flesh it out. Melee weapons. It's fairly easy to install. They even have their own installer. However, I have to say this. Currently, if you have a previous version of Roguetech installed, they don't self-clean their registry. So you have to do a full uninstall and clean your registry between patches to make sure you've completely cleaned the problem. This is my experience. Your experience may differ, but in order for me to even play the game, because I installed a previous version of Roguetech back when the mod was just starting out, I had to actually uninstall Battletech, delete all the folders, reinstall it on a different drive, and then install Roguetech into my Battletech folder on a different drive in order to clear the problem. So it is a mod. So it's not like Bethesda level bugs, but there are some bugs and issues. Furthermore, the mod does really increase it doesn't do it as much as it used to, but it does increase the load times, particularly the first time you load in to loading your game. But let's go over some positives, some things they've added here. Light mechs, for instance, are much more survivable. They don't lose pips from being shot at. Only sensor lock can remove pips, and they've made it where sensor lock removes up to 3 pips, which, in my opinion, makes it overpowered. Because when you have higher tier pilots who are fairly accurate, and you have some of the higher tier end weapons and targeting computers and stuff that remove pips off the target that you're being fired at, in addition to a sensor lock, you can end up with greater than 100% chance to hit. And since every vehicle and turret in the game seems to have sensor lock, light mechs become a lot less survivable on base assault missions where every turret has sensor lock and your 7 pips of dodge suddenly becomes 1. So it's not quite as balanced as I'd like it, but it makes sensor lock viable for mech warriors. But because the developers don't have the tools to make it where it applies differently coming from a vehicle or a turret, it makes it overpowered on vehicles and turrets. So there's a weird balance there that's just kind of there. Melee weapons, because there's so many melee modifications that you can apply to a single mech, melee weapons can become very overpowered. For instance, I have a 25-ton commando right now that's running around with 125 pinpoint melee attack. So 125 points goes to one section from a 25-ton mech. I literally just have it run around behind mechs and rip entire torsos off of assault mechs with one hit. Or rip a leg off of an assault mech with one hit. The Black Knight I have hits for nearly 170. Which is looking at, say, one of my stalkers and just ripping right into one of the side torsos with a single strike. No questions asked. No ranged weapon in the game even has near that capability. But it is actually enough to outright destroy an arm or a leg off a stalker. This isn't even the maximum potential damage. I've had computer mechs like a crab who's fully melee fitted run up and do 200 points of fucking damage with one hit and just rip an assault mech's leg off instantly. So mech survivability, because of all of these extra weapons and modifications and stuff, goes down a lot, and you still only have the 4 mechs. And it doesn't count the extra support weapons they've added, like chain swords and face flamers and flame maces and spikes and all this other stuff that you can put in for support weapons that also fire when you melee. Most often, when the computer gets a melee mech, this creates it's just going to charge at you, and one of your mechs is going to be crippled. And because of how the sensor mechanics work, it creates a sense of unknown. I fully believe the Roguetech guys have modified how the sensor mechanics work, because even when I'm on top of an enemy, literally meleeing them, I can't tell what their equipment is. I feel like that sense of unknown from XCOM doesn't actually belong here. In the base game, within a round or two, I would get someone close enough to scan the enemy and know what weapons they have, and therefore know whether or not I should stay at long range, close range, medium range, like what I should do to manipulate my range modifiers to be the best advantage I can have based on what I'm fighting. Here, without extremely high tactics scores, I still have constant issues just getting a scan to know what they have. Or an outright sensor lock, which is a level 8 mech warrior ability. Being that high a level mech warrior ability, and the fact that it costs you your turn, means that I'm sacrificing firepower just so I can remove some pips off of a target, which can be really useful, but also just so I can know what equipment they have. And this is the biggest weakness of the mod for me. Its gameplay is so radical that it changes how everything works. But because the modders don't have the tools to build custom animations, and some of the sound effects are reused, combined with the sensor suite problems of not being able to see what the enemy has at a glance, like you could in the base game, you have 4 or 5 weapons sharing the same animation, and they're radically different weapons. If, for instance, the taser, gauze rifle, and periphery rifles all share the same animation and the same sound effect. A taser is a close-range weapon that doesn't do a lot of damage, generates some heat, and applies a lot of debuffs to a mech. A gauze rifle is a long-range weapon that does significant damage and is very scary to be shot at by. And the periphery rifle doesn't do either of these things. So without the ability to scan and know what it is, either you have to know the enemy you're facing, because a lot of the vehicles are stock designed vehicles from Sarna. So like the Alicorn tank is 3 gauze rifles. I know that. But if you don't know that, because you're not a heavy classic Battletech player, you're just going to think that everything has a gauze rifle, and then at the end of the match you're going to be disappointed when it's like a light periphery rifle, and you treated it like a gauze rifle the whole time. This is just one example where the mod falls short, in my opinion, And I really think that they need to modify how the tactics and sensors work in order for you to get a better idea of what you're fighting. Because one of the things for balancing purposes here that really sucks is they can't modify the maps, they can't make new maps either with the mod tools they have, and the developers haven't given them the tools. I really feel like Harebrained Schemes should treat them like 2K Games has treated the Long War team, but they're not doing that yet. But what this means is you have these funny moments where you think you're being shot at by, you know, Gauss rifles or regular PPCs, and they're really heavy PPCs or clan PPCs that do a lot more damage, and you don't know that until it suddenly hits you and you go, oh crap. And with the fact they can't modify the maps are designed to play in the original game with the old AI. They've drastically improved the AI to operate less on the function of the AI trying to get the best shot it can and get to close range, and more with the AI trying to avoid fire and stay in its designated primary weapon range brackets, as well as attempt to flank you and instead of fighting you head on. What this means is you're going to drop into some maps and it's just not a doable mission. There's no combination of mechs, there's no combination of equipment you can put on your mechs, there's no combination of tactics, there's nothing you can do. The mission is just untenable. And you're going to have to bail on the mission and just take your lick. And doing this too many times can not only anger the faction that you're trying to work for, but also can cost you dearly in terms of income. Furthermore, the AI, due to the massive amounts of sensor lock that the vehicles have, knows my loadouts, like flat out, because they just scan me constantly. However, without that information returned, the ability to get a sensor lock is a late game feature for any of my mech pilots. I'm left at a point of loss for how to treat the enemy tactically, and the AI, well, if it adjusts its tactics based on my loadouts, knows exactly what to do with me. It really doesn't feel balanced. And since I don't, since there's no visual animations except for the Axeman, Hatchetman, or other mechs that have an obvious melee weapon, I can't tell what mech has a melee weapon and which ones don't. Till I have sensor lock unlocked, or I get so close that it's too late to stay away from it. And this disadvantage is amplified with the advanced technology that's available because, let's face it, Gauss rifles and ERPPCs and ultra AC cannons and rotary cannons and all this other really cool technology is designed to operate at longer ranges, and maps that are fairly open that you have to just move through forests, you're going to find yourself taking a lot of fire and not able to really fight back. I also think that there are problems with how ECM is implemented, because I have entire lances that all have ECM units, but the enemy can still see us on sensors at extreme range and put rounds in us. And when the enemy ECM activates, even though I have like a Tactics 7 pilot on the field with a Starleague Defense Force scanning suite and an active probe, he can't see the target till we get almost invisible range. And I think that there needs to be like a real look at how sensors work if they can do it. If they can't do it, I understand. But if the mod team can do it, I feel like they should really look more deeply into how sensors work in order to make sure the AI isn't just getting a massive advantage over the player, particularly when you get to the 4.5 or 5 skull missions, which with skull variants can be 6 or 7 skull missions in reality that you're having to fight. The 2 maps specifically I've run into, I just had to bail on the missions because they were just, my lance looked overqualified for the 3 skull mission, and I dropped and it was a 5 skull mission, no questions asked, because they had several vehicles with gauze weaponry, 2 mechs with melee weaponry, and just tons of LRMs. There must have at least been 12 or 13 opponents on the map, because I counted 11 different turns the AI was taking, not including turns where they double up on phase, and therefore they're taking their turn at the same time. I do like how initiative works now, because it means that my assault mechs might actually go first, if they have good pilots versus bad pilots. It really does reward you for keeping your pilots alive, but also you can get punished for keeping your pilots alive. This is the last thing I have that is a little problematic, and it's how salvage and damaging or destroying your mechs works in Roguetech as opposed to the Battletech base game. In Roguetech, when a mech is destroyed, including your own, they go into the salvage pool. This means destroyed mechs are just lost. It makes it where you can't afford to lose mechs in battle, and I do like the sense of permadeath it adds to the game, but it really, really punishes you for ejecting. Since an ejected from a mech counts as being destroyed, even ejecting means you save the pilot, the mech cannot be recovered despite your victory. I can appreciate the level of difficulty and tactical decision this now adds, but if the enemy gets lucky and deals 2 or 3 piloting hits out the gate, and I'm down to 1 HP on my pilot, I'm probably going to eject him to save him. Especially if he's got a good chunk of XP, which means that I have to just either lose the mech or restart the mission. Or abandon the mission altogether. And I feel like there is a middle point here somewhere that should be achieved where the game will detect how much damage the mech has actually taken so that you're not having to salvage a mech, you're just replacing the head instead of, you know, losing the mech outright.
Yes, Commander.
The AI works a lot better too, so all your old tactics, all your old builds, they don't work. Just flat out. You're going to have to learn all new tactics, all new builds to actually get this to work. And it does make the game much more difficult, but more enjoyable to play. And I think that's the most important part here, is that the game is more enjoyable to play. It is much more difficult, and the variety of weapons and builds is staggering and overwhelming. Not to mention the fact that even the interface is clearly not designed in terms of the logistical interface of running your mech company for all of these added weapons and ammunition types and everything, because I can end up scrolling through the autocannon list or the ballistic weapon list for like 4 or 5 minutes easily.
Turret destroyed.
Is the AI perfect, or is any of this perfect? No, and no AI really ever is, but I have enjoyed Roguetech. The challenge is there, but the mod is not perfect and it does have issues, and you should become prepared to have to restart your campaign as a career mode a couple times to get used to all the new mechanics. Like, you should sit down and come prepared for that. It lets you explore all of the possible technology of the Battletech game that we've seen in things like MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries, or a lot of the up to the Civil War tech in MechWarrior Online, or just a lot of different new features and capabilities, but it limits nothing, which is the problem. Because if I just want to play, say, Tech 2 Tournament Legal, I can't do that. I really feel like once Battletech has released Urban Warfare and the other DLC that they've promised, and the game is complete, that the Roguetech guys should go back in and give like options to release technology by year, or things of that nature that will make it where you're not just dropped into this environment where you might end up on the first mission facing a stealth armored assassin. Or you might run into a dual Ultra 20 Clan Tech King Crab and just have a bad day. It does a much better simulation of what it would be like to run a mercenary unit in Battletech, and it opens up all the other factions though. So Faction War on the Galaxy map was a nice touch. I also genuinely believe that Harebrained Schemes should give these people a chance. Get them all to sign NDAs, whatever, and sit down with them to talk about developing Roguetech like Long War has been developed for XCOM 1 and 2. Give them all the same tools that they have. Give them the ability to create custom maps and custom animations, in particular, custom models. Like, there are a bunch of mech chassis that even in the community developed mod don't exist. So you end up seeing like Valkyrie and Vindicator and it's the same mech model. Or you end up seeing like Stinger and Black Knight and they look identical. And, you know, they actually don't. They're not supposed to anyway. So I think that the developers, Harebrained Schemes, should really sit down and talk about it. And I also think the modders would do a great benefit to give some player warning on their details page of Nexus mods, because I'm gonna be entirely honest, they don't warn the players about what they can't do, so you're just kind of left there. It does say that this mod isn't supposed to be easy and the enemies are deadlier. That's intentional, and you get to play with all the fancy toys, but it doesn't tell you, you know, what they can and can't do. It also doesn't tell you, you know, hey, we know this is a problem, we can't fix it, so be prepared. I think they would do more to their credit to have that on there as a part of their description here on Nexus mods, is to let the players know what they can and can't mod and what they have and haven't actually changed, besides just going through the change log, so that we know not to expect different maps, and we know that there are going to be problems that hit us while we're playing that we're just going to have to deal with, or we're going to have to just consider that every mission is now not completable due to balancing, or just straight up the map just sucks. And that's not their fault, and they shouldn't be blamed for that, but it would behoove them to make that kind of a statement. So that's what I think of Roguetech. Is it worth playing? Yes. It breathes new life into Battletech. It makes it really worth playing. It makes it worth playing for the long term, because you're constantly getting new mechs and new technology and just things that you're like, ooh, that's here? And you're like, shiny. And then you start playing around with it, and you end up with mechs that you would have never constructed before, or had the ability to, or even considered. But you should be prepared for some outright what the hell balance issues, and you should be prepared for the possibility that you're just going to have to abandon some missions and just say fuck it, because there's no way to complete it. That's my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Have you guys experienced Roguetech? You guys have seen me playing it on live stream. Our first live stream went terrible because it dropped a stealth armor assassin and a stealth armor commando like out the gate on me, and I had like the gunnery 2 and 3 pilots, and I'm just like, what do? I can't hit this thing. Like, we could not hit it to save our lives at all. We couldn't hit it with ballistic weapons. We couldn't hit it with melee. We had no ability to like deal with this mech, and I ended up just running out of ammunition and abandoning the mission and starting over. It was that bad. So I feel like there should have been some fair warning, other than this is not easy and that's intentional. There should be some actual warning as we can't modify the maps, and you are going to run into missions you can't do because there was no way to do that mission when I have less than 1% chances to hit, even standing still at point blank range. Or there should be like some more information on the Nexus mod page besides just a changelog. That would behoove the developers of the mod, so the community now knows what is going on, and also would be more prepared for what you're going to encounter. In the meantime, this has been Fiaura, and this has been my analysis and review of the Roguetech mod. What do you guys think? Do you enjoy it? Have you played it? You can check it out in the description below. I also linked the community asset mod that is required for it in order to be able to play it. And they have full instructions on the website, and all of them have installers. So you just got to install. You just got to run the installer, and you're good, and you should be good to go. If you're not, I also linked the Battletech Discord, where there's a Roguetech section where you can come in and get Roguetech support. I do give you some warning though. Some of the developers of Roguetech are a little what's the term I'm looking for here? Not socially prepared to be PR people. So if you get someone who's being just abrasive or rude or something, ask to talk to another person, because they're still people too, and they work regular jobs, and this is not their primary course of industry. They do this because they have a love for it, not because they want to make money. In the meantime, this has been Fiaura, and I will see you guys next time. You stayed to the end of the video. This is normally the part where I tell you all this other stuff to do, but you know what? No. One thing. There's only a week left to order your copy of the novel that's coming out from me. After that, it goes up to regular price and I'll have to publish. Anything else? Oh yeah, if you found this helpful, like button. If you didn't find it helpful, dislike. And leave comments. I talk back. Most of the time, I do! Don't you give me that look. Don't you do it. You're giving me a look. I know you are. I know you are. Alright, this has dragged on long enough. I'll see you guys later tonight.